Good morning. So, as promised, I would explain why I'm not a devout Christian anymore and why I post what I post. Um, I want to, before I really get into depth, I just want to say my goal is to help people gain freedom from religion and have the freedom that I and peace that I have. But I am aware of that that may never happen, but I just I want to put effort into it and give people an option outside of religion. Um, but I no means think I can stop people believing what they believe. I'm not trying to force my beliefs down your throat. If you don't like what I post, then just scroll on by. It doesn't matter to me at all. But with that said, let's get into it. So most of my life, I was a real devout Christian, was really about that Christian life. I even did a year in Bible college. I've helped a lot of youth ministries. I did a lot of the, sound ministry, helping with like audio and video and stuff. Um, you know, I was big on witnessing to people about Christ. You know, doing stuff in my community that would show the love of Christ, and I was really dedicated because I thought I had finally found happiness in Christianity, where everything probably, if I could really pinpoint where I started to have like really big doubts, is in 20, I want to say the end of 2018. I went to a pastor, an AG, which is Assembly of God, pastor conference with my then pastor. He brought me along because he knew his words that I was interested in this stuff. But what I would later find out on the second, on that first night, was a plan to confront me about something from another sort of pastor I knew. So that night, the service had ended, and this guy that I knew from the Bible college that I went to, that also knew my pastor, basically said, "Can I give you a word?" If you don't know what means given a word means, in Christianity, that means the Holy Spirit has, downloaded a message to that person to give to another person. And he, in so many words, I don't remember everything, but basically he said, if you have not used this call on God, the call that God has on your life, then you might as well stop. You're not doing anything with it. You're not, there's no purpose of you. There's no purpose in you doing this. And basically, like, it wasn't very encouraging. And I remember being very upset that night. And in the car ride home, my pastor tried to confront me about it, and I was just like, I don't know how to feel. I need to process. He kept on wanting to talk about it. I didn't really want to talk about it. But I went back to the second service with him and acted like everything was fine. It really wasn't. And things went downhill there. That put me into like almost a 3-year depression. Because imagine you think you're called to be in the ministry, and then you get told. And I'm not saying that I was supposed to be in the ministry and I just deserved to be in the ministry. And I'm great to a certain extent. I'm great somebody told me, hey, this isn't for you. It was more of an encouraging thing. So I just started to doubt like what do I actually believe in, like what's the point, like, because I really thought I was supposed to be this like man for Christ that was supposed to be involved in like the pastoral ministry, um, and that didn't I didn't know how to deal with that because that was my sole identity. I had made it my identity, and you know, then things started to get really weird between me and my pastor because I had like stopped helping out as much, only doing sound. He didn't like that, but wouldn't confront me about it. And then like the biggest thing that I think when I started to realize that church wasn't for me anymore, we had gotten a new building. Someone gave up their church and gave us the building, and I didn't help. I was still in a bad place. I was just trying to go to work and go home, and so I didn't help out with the painting and like redoing the whole building and stuff, and I could tell that was bothering him, but he wouldn't say anything to me anything about it. And then they didn't tell anybody in the church, but on our opening Sunday, they introduced the board members of the church. And, you know, it wasn't that I wasn't offended that they didn't select me, but it was obvious that, like, it was that I was no longer, like, in leadership anymore. And, you know, so, and I kind of get it, you know, with the state of mind that I was at, probably not in a good place to be in that position. But it was also that he was taking like slight jabs at my wife because my wife didn't put up with his BS. So we moved back after that, we moved back to New Hampshire. We tried a couple of churches, and we both realized like we didn't know what we believed at the time, but we knew like this wasn't it. The last church we tried, it was in 2020, and that didn't work out. It was a weird church. It was like one of those mega churches where nobody really talks to you. Everybody just, you know, does the service and then like leaves. So in 2020, I just said, you know what? I said, screw it. I'm done. My wife was struggling with her mental health at the time, and she wanted to stop going to church. I said, I want to stop going too. I'm done with everything. And so for the last 6 years, I've been out of Christianity and stopped going to church. And during that time, in 2020, I looked at different religions. I'm not going to pronounce his name right, and I apologize, but Sadhguru. I started listening to him. He made some sense. And I started, listening to some Buddhist speakers, some Wiccan people, all different types of faith. And it just, none of it made sense to me. So by the end of 2020, I just said, screw it. I believe there's something out there, but I don't believe any religion has it right. And I think the other biggest thing, there were some other big things that I noticed when I left the church, Christianity, that didn't make sense to me, because it wasn't just people, it was the fact, if you're a Christian, most Christians don't support gay marriage or the LGBTQI community. And, my whole life I was told that gay was a sin. Homosexuality was a sin, and stuff. And I didn't really have a problem with with gay people or the LGBTQI community, I just kind of just repeated like a puppet, because that's, what our pastor told us. Like, and I didn't want to go against God, so, I never I always put on the front. And by putting on the front, I probably ended up hurting people who were part of that community, and I do apologize. It's no excuse, but I do apologize. Let's get back on track here. And, I honestly, I didn't understand why, as a Christian, we had to be Republicans. That was shoved down our throats. I remember, the last time I was at the church that I grew up in, and I was still going there, they had a July 4th service, and they played that Lee Greenwood song, and they were raising their hands in worship, and that's the weirdest thing. And then to go a little bit back before I left my last church in Maine, the one I was talking about, that I went to to a pastor's conference with that pastor. In the 2016 election, also gave me some weird vibes about Christianity, because the fact that I noticed that people in my faith were worshiping conservative politics, the Republican Party, Trump, more than Jesus. And I thought that was weird, but I left it alone. So I always found that weird. Let's see. And, I'm trying to keep this as respectful as I can. So I'm trying to censor myself a little bit here. So that's kind of like a short version. I can do a longer video about my journey in Christianity if you want to, but I want to hit some other points. I personally believe that religion, and not just Christianity, but all religions, are just a cancer. And when I say that, if you want to practice your faith, I support you all the way. I just don't think it should be involved in our government or the way we shape policies, in our schools and stuff like that. I don't think you have any place. No religion has place in our schools or our government. And I'm just sick of religion and all. Since I have left Christianity, my mental health is better. I went to therapy and forgave myself of stuff, and I've never felt more freer. I'm a lot more happier. I still deal with depression, but I feel like I deal with it more in a healthy way. I have more healthy coping skills. One of the things I've gotten freedom from was from age 5 to 6, I was molested, and that was really hard for me. When I had brought it up to pastors or people, they just told me, you just need to forgive him and move on. And which, I don't understand why I would have to forgive him. And I would like to move on, but the church had never given me any coping mechanisms or any ways of dealing with this other than just praying it out. And praying wasn't working for me. It wasn't helping my mental health at all. I went to a lot of altar calls and stuff to get healing, when they have healing services, and I was never healed until I went to therapy from a non-Christian view, and now I don't have nightmares of what have happened to me, and and I just feel like I am in a better place. And I just don't feel like religion can give me that happiness. You know, I don't know. I'm rambling. I had wrote something out, and I couldn't. It just, no, I know, it just didn't work for me. So I hope I've made some sense. I didn't want to do a whole long video because I don't know how many people are actually going to view this. I'm a small content creator. I don't have socials, so I know not a lot of people are going to see this. But I hope it answers some stuff. I know some of you are going to say, well, it sounds like you, ran away from religion because of man. And that's a small part, but it's like, I never actually heard the voice of Christ or the Holy Spirit, however you want to identify him. So yeah, it was probably big part of it maybe was man, because, if God is real, he allowed these people to negatively affect my life. If he sent them, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm not always good at explaining myself. If you have any questions, I'll answer. But if you're going to comment, give me, legit questions. If you're going to quote Bible verses and shit like that, just leave me alone. Peace out.